Is it fair that a character can be better than others if they're difficult to play? The poster boy for this question has to be TF2's Sniper. If you're in their line of sight, you might just die. Is it fair that they can delete the most important class in the game by clicking twice at the right point in their screen? CS does seem to think so, but in CS the AWP is an incredibly big investment that requires the efforts of several rounds to buy, and has inbuilt shortcomings in the form of low movement accuracy, low fire rate, and, recently, low ammo. The AWP's effectiveness changes drastically based on the player's capability to use it. Obviously, the same thing is true of everything in the game, but the extent to which it peaks and troughs is more extensive than anything else. Now, how are you supposed to balance a game? Are you meant to balance it around most of the player base, or some of the few pro players that make you a lot of money, and hope that those changes are applicable to standard play? Apex's Pathfinder was in a balance limbo for years because his grapple relies upon what are ostensibly archaic engine exploits which are extremely unintuitive to just learn without any sort of proper guide to follow. There was a period where the cooldown on it ascended to the ungodly high 35 seconds, which is about as long as it takes to install Deep Rock Galactic. The reason this was done is because Pathfinder is capable of ridiculous rotates like this.
On the map. Here I go.
But if you don't know what you're doing, his grapple is pretty much relegated to this.
Grappling. Lucky us. We are already inside the ring.
Crypto 2 has been in this awkward state since his release. It's the same one as Siege's Warden. Both of them are intended to counter certain strats and supply general utility, but in pubs, people are just running at each other screaming. And you're just straight up not going to encounter a building that's been trapped up by a Caustic, Watson, and Catalyst, which can only be properly breached via a tactical DDoS. This ends up making these two characters practically useless in the hands of most, but exceptionally valuable when piloted by professionals. And now, enter Azir. The Emperor of the Sands has been a balance nightmare for 10 years. He entered the Rift extremely overloaded and has lost a grand total of 10 individual mechanics since his original release. That is more than most champions have at all. Alongside our favorite blue guy, they've both had an absurdly bad win rate for years upon years, but paradoxically they're one of the best, safest champs in existence. After nearly a decade of being in the garbage, Riot are at least giving a stab at fixing Azir. Now, I'm not a professional game designer, but Freak, the person leading this patch, is. He has made it very clear during his coverage of it that he was not looking to completely remake Azir and instead change around some numbers to make him less viable in pro play and more viable for, well, me. I appreciate the effort a lot, and genuinely do have a lot of faith in him to pull this off, but I think his talk showcased that Azir has some really critical flaws which are forcing them to gut him like a Cornish game hen. Azir has some problematic professionally piloted performance. His skill floor is high enough that his strengths really only come out when he's used by good players, but they're invisible to those who are bad at him. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but the extent of his strength is making the first 15 minutes of the game unwinnable for his opposing laner. Azir's abilities revolve around his W, which summons a Soldier of the Sands. His Q orders all currently summoned soldiers to charge, dealing damage, slowing, and opening Azir up to get some follow-up attacks. This one ability has been so oppressive that they've had to keep him in this crippled state for so long because he'd take over the game otherwise. Azir really excels at annoying his laner. By Freak's own admission, the reason they've dropped his mana to ridiculously low levels is because of this one ability. Being able to repeatedly catapult soldiers at your opponent was really oppressive when Azir is on another continent, completely safe and realistically unable to be countered. Even if you manage to catch him out, if he's playing conservatively with his cooldowns, he tends to be able to ping-pong a couple miles away before you have a chance to finish him. The Emperor's ultimate is extremely cool, and the Shurima Shuffle, which is using every ability in his kit in a single combo, does look wicked. Unfortunately, it's also terrible for your enemy laner. If they don't have any movement abilities and have popped their several minute cooldown flash, they just can't walk into lane at all. If they do, it's not difficult for the Azir to coordinate with their jungler and have them pay your lane a visit as Mr. Sandman shuffles their laner onto the other side of the planet. Language and coordination truly are overpowered, but God knows how much League players refuse to do it. Now, I love Azir. He's like the underdog that always makes it through no matter the punishment he receives, and playing him has this kind of magic vibe that I haven't really felt since playing Titanfall 2. It's the feeling of...
They outnumber us, 3-1.
Then it is an even fight.
This vibe emanated from being overwhelmed from multiple targets, but going, no, I got this, and somehow winning anyway. I get the same vibe from Azir knowing that I'm literally playing the most mechanically intensive champion in the game, and have to play so much better than my laner to even be on par with them. This very aspect frustrated me a lot when I was learning how to play the bird, because having to listen to Vlad's weirdly seductive groans when he obliterated me by pressing 3 buttons was very aggravating, but now it's something that I both take pride in and enjoy immensely. Azir is intrinsically extremely engaging because he's so difficult. Even the relatively easier parts of the game are very fun because they're so mechanically challenging. There is nothing like the high of doing well in Azir, knowing that you properly utilized your kit and teammates to dominate lane. It certainly helps that his VO is incredible, both in League and Runeterra.
When every trace of you is lost, I will remain.
Now, this kind of pains me to say because I really enjoy Azir in his current state and have held a pretty decent win rate with the guy for the last few years, but I think the state of his Q alone absolutely requires a sizable rework, and his ult isn't helping matters. The problem isn't that Azir has situations where he's good or can delete people like Zed is in the game. The issue is that he's simultaneously capable of those things while also being incredibly safe. To reiterate, a rework was not the scope of this patch, and I really like that they're taking a swing at the guy. After reviewing Freak's hour-and-a-half-long discussion about the changes, I agree with most of his argument for them, especially those around attack speed. The way it currently works, increasing ranks on W increases your attack speed gradually, and having 3 soldiers out gives you a massive attack speed steroid for some reason. Getting rid of these and just shoving all of that into his base attack speed scaling seems like a really obvious change. His Q being the source of so many problems is really painful though, and while I'm not a game designer, I do really like Azir. Come with me. Let's dream. Azir's 3 other ascended brethren from Shurima have ults that show them all releasing their power and going sicko mode. Nasus and Renekton go big mode, and Zareth channels his energy to create a unique, larger version of his W. Azir, similarly, produces a kind of enhanced version of his W when ulting, but only aesthetically. Gameplay-wise, it's creating terrain and forcing a displacement on the enemy team, which, none of his kit is about. It's really important to remember what Azir was meant to be. He's meant to be a DPS control mage, exerting his control over the battlefield via soldier placement which provides area denial. I don't know why, but the recent changes are trying to make him into more of a burst mage when that's literally the reason he is a problem. This might sound insane, but I think Azir's Q should purely be a positioning tool with very little mana cost and negligible if not non-existent damage. Take the power out of his Q and pump it back into his W by increasing Azir's attack speed and the damage of his soldiers. His ult is still a problem though. How do we fix that? This is Legends of Runeterra Azir. When he attacks, he summons a soldier alongside him. It's pretty simple. When he levels up and ascends, that soldier becomes a Sandstone Charger, a much larger unit which is way more impactful. When Azir ults, instead of him creating a wall of lads, let him actually ascend like the rest of the Ascended in the game. He grows in size, gets a stat buff, increased soldier placement and control range, and has his abilities significantly modified. Soldiers could be replaced with Sandstone Chargers, which have much larger range, higher damage, and their charge on Azir's Q can stun. This, I think, keeps Azir in line with what was originally envisioned. A mage who excels at gaining map control via placing puppets to fight for him, and not a shuffler. It fixes his main problems of his Q and ult being too dominant in lane, and reinforces what I assume was his intended playstyle. Maybe also let him put his passive turret on allied turrets that haven't been destroyed yet, so he actually has a passive before 15 minutes into the game. Now, literally every puppet character Riot has ever released has failed in some way or another, with Yorick being cast to the winds. Mord having his removed from the game. You know, I'm starting to see a pattern here, actually. Annie and Belveth being balanced nightmares, Ivern being forgotten, Heimerdinger being deported to support, and Malzahar existing. Maybe then, it's just fitting that selecting Azir statistically drops your team's win rate by 5%. Besides, if they actually went through with changes this drastic, God knows how many people would complain. That might as well be a League player's third job after avoiding showers and shouting things that will demonetize me. I do want to make it as clear as I can that I am really glad Azir is seeing massive changes. He could stay in his current, overly crippled and yet still unbalanced state, or get wide, sweeping changes and maybe come out better in the end. I sure hope he does. Also, God bless you, Freak, for completely rewriting the turret. What a guy.